Hello everyone, welcome to the new session of Manure and Fertilizer Part 2. So in this session we are going to study about phosphate fertilizer, secondary major nutrient fertilizer. So there are many different types of fertilizer that contain secondary, that is primary, that one is the nitrogen and phosphate fertilizer, and the secondary major nutrient fertilizer, and some fertilizer that contain micronutrient as well. Okay, so this thing we are going to cover up in this particular session. So the first one is phosphatic fertilizer. Phosphatic fertilizers are the chemical substances that contain nutrient phosphorus in absorbable form, that is phosphate ion. So this phosphate ion can easily be absorbed by the plants, crop plants, and that yield after conversion in the soil. So this is type of the phosphatic fertilizer. So we are having different forms of phosphatic fertilizer. So the first example is the superphosphate phosphatic fertilizer. The first example is the superphosphate, that is calcium CaH2PO4 whole twice. CaH2PO4 whole twice. It is the most important phosphatic fertilizer in use. So this is one of the most important phosphatic fertilizer example, and it contains 16% of P2O5, means phosphorus pentaoxide, in available form. So 16% of phosphorus pentaoxide is available, and it is gray ash like powder with a good keeping or the storage quality. So it can be properly uh, is a good to keep and store this particular type of fertilizer, and its color is gray ash like powder. Phosphatic fertilizers are hardly moves in the soil, and hence they are placed in the root zone. So it do not move from place to place, so it should be properly placed at the place of root so that it can absorb from there. If we are keeping this fertilizer away from the root, then it won't be able to absorb, because it is not readily movable. Second example is the triple superphosphate. The concentrated superphosphate is called as a triple superphosphate, and it contains 46% of phosphorus pentaoxide, that is P2O5. So it is having greater quantity of this phosphate. This fertilizer is suitable for all crops and all the type of soil. For any crop this can be used, and for any type of soil that this can be applied. So it is an acid soil. In acid soil, it should be used in the conjunction with the organic manure. So but if the soil is quite acidic, then we must put some organic manure along with this triple superphosphate. It can be applied before or at the sowing or the transplanting time. Next one is the potassic fertilizer. Potassic fertilizers are the chemical substances containing potassium in the absorbed form, that is K plus ion. This is the potassium absorbed form. And there are the two potassium fertilizer, muriate of potash, that is KCl, and the sulfate of potash, K2SO4. Very important. So the two potassium fertilizer are KCl, that is muriate of potash, and sulfate of potash, that is K2SO4. They are water soluble and so are readily available to the plant, so they get easily solubilized in the water, and it can easily be available to the crop plants and they get absorbed from the roots. So the first one, let us discuss about the first type, that is the potassium chloride, KCl. Potassium chloride or the muriate of potash is a white or red crystals containing 60% of potassium oxide. Very important. It is completely soluble in water and therefore readily available to the crop. So it easily get solubilized in water and it is readily available to the crop. So it is not lost from the soil as it absorbed on the colloidal surface. So this get attached to the colloidal surface of the soil, right? And so it is not get lost from the soil. Potassium chloride, it can be applied at the sowing or before after sowing. The chlorine content is about 47%. Its chlorine content is objectionable to some crops like tobacco, potato, etc., where the quality is the consideration. So it is having a lot quantity of the chlorine. So tobacco, potato and tomato plants, we do not apply such type of fertilizer. Next example is the potassium sulfate, K2SO4. Potassium sulfate or the sulfate of potash is a white salt and it contains 48% of K2O. It is soluble in water and therefore readily available to the crop also. It does not produce any acidity or alkalinity in the soil. So it is present in the proper form that can be easily absorbed by the crop plants. Okay. So it do not produce any acidity and alkalinity in the soil. It is preferred for the fertilization of crops like tobacco, potato, etc., where the quality is the prime importance. So it is costly because it is made by treating the potassium chloride and magnesium sulfate. But this particular type of fertilizer is quite costly because it is made by treating potassium chloride and magnesium sulfate. So it need a proper preparation step, so that becomes a quite costly. Magnesium fertilizer. So the first next topic of this particular session is the secondary major nutrient fertilizer. Okay, so we have already talked about the potassium fertilizer, nitrogen fertilizer, and okay, phosphorus based fertilizer. So these are the primary one. Now we are having the secondary major fertilizer. Okay, so the first example is the magnesium fertilizer, the fertilizer that contain magnesium in good quantity. So these are the chemical substances containing the nutrient magnesium in the form of magnesium cations, that is Mg2 plus ion. Magnesium sulfate, this is the formula, and the utilization rate of the magnesium fertilizer decreases with increase in the potassium supply. So if you are supplying the potassium also at the same time, then the utilization of the magnesium get decreases. Calcium fertilizer. Next example is the calcium fertilizer. These are the chemical substances containing the nutrient calcium in absorbable calcium cation, that is Ca2 plus ion form. So this is present in the calcium ion form. The raw material of the calcium fertilizer is the lime found in the nature. So from where we get this calcium? We take lime for this calcium fertilizer. So lime is the raw material that is present naturally and that can be used for making calcium fertilizer. So the first one is the calcium chloride, CaCl2.6H2O. So it contains least 15% calcium and it is highly water soluble and can therefore be dissolved for the application of foliar treatment. So this is the foliar treatment. We apply this calcium chloride type of fertilizer. Sulfate fertilizer. Next type is the sulfate fertilizer. These are the chemical substances containing the nutrient sulfur in the form of absorbable sulfate ion, that is SO4 2 minus ion. The sulfur requirement of the plants are about 2/3 of their phosphorus requirement. So the phosphorus is, that is why is the primary major nutrient that is required by the plant, and sulfur is required in about 2/3 of the one that is required phosphorus. Okay, so its requirement is quite less. The substantial sulfur supplies occur in minor constituents of various sodium, potassium and potassium fertilizers. Fertilization with sulfur becomes necessary with increasing the removal from the soil, with rising agriculture production, especially in the plants with high sulfur requirement, that is mustard. So for the mustard, we require lot of sulfur. So for that, sulfur fertilizer is added. Micronutrient fertilizer. So the next topic is the micronutrient fertilizer. So they are the fertilizer that contain micronutrients, the nutrients that are required in a very small quantity, but their requirement is very essential. Okay, their presence is very essential. The importance of the fertilization of crops with micronutrients is increasing mainly because of the greater removal from the soil. So intensive limiting of soil, intensive drainage of the soil, higher use of nitrogenous, phosphatic and the potassium fertilizers. So generally the soil is having less amount of this micronutrients in the soil. Okay, so there are 7 essential micronutrients required by the plant. So what are they? They are iron, manganese, zinc, copper, chlorine, boron and molybdenum. So these are some of the micronutrients. Okay, and so the fertilizer that are based on this micronutrient must contain these particular types of nutrients. So first one is the iron nutrients. These are generally water soluble substances predominantly sprayed as a foliar nutrients on the crop plants, absorbed iron in the form of Fe2 plus iron. So very important. So, iron fertilizers, the commonly used iron fertilizers are as follows: ferrous sulfate FeSO4.7H2O, chelates is FeEDTA and FeEDDPA. So, it is water soluble fertilizer, ferrous sulfate, and it contains 20% of iron. And this is Fe chelate form, suitable for the application as a foliar nutrients. Manganese fertilizer, next important nutrient is the micronutrient is the manganese. So the manganese fertilizer are in the form of manganese sulfate, MnSO4 into 7H2O. So it is well known for the water soluble Mn fertilizer. It is pink salt containing 24% of manganese. It dissolves in water and is suitable for the foliar application too. Mn chelate, that is MnDTA, is also available. So it contains 13% of Mn. It play important role in the crop fertilization. So when there is a fertilization loss in the crop plant, so we can use this particular type of manganese fertilizer. Now, the third one is the zinc fertilizer. Zinc is also one of the very important nutrients. Zinc fertilizer play an important role in the zinc deficient areas. So, zinc sulfate, that is ZnSO4 into 7H2O. It is a water soluble white salt containing 23% of zinc. It is applied as a foliar nutrient. Its acidic action causes corrosion damage to the plants. Zinc oxide, ZNO. So it contains 70% of zinc. It is slightly soluble in water and it is used as a slow acting foliar treatment. So again, this is also used for the foliar treatment. Next example is the copper fertilizer. Copper fertilizer have been used to correct copper deficiencies. So sometimes there are some of the deficiencies that are present in the plant that is due to the copper. So we applied copper sulfate CuSO4 into 5H2O that contain 25% of copper, and we can also supply this copper sulfate as in the form of CuSO4 dot H2O, that is 36% of copper is present in this one. Boron fertilizer. So this is another, that is the borax Na2B4O10H2O. It contains 11% of boron. It is water soluble white salt. It applied as a soil dressing or the foliar application. Another form of this fertilizer, boron fertilizer, is the boric acid H3BO3. It contains 18% of boron. It is white crystalline powder. It is applied as a foliar treatment as well. Micronutrient fertilizer, molybdenum fertilizer. These are water soluble salt which contain MO. They are suitable for the soil application and the foliar application as well. Sodium molybdenate, Na2MOO4 into 2H2O. It contains 40% of molybdenum. Ammonium molybdate, that is NH4 whole 6 MO7 O24 into 4H2O. It contains 54% of molybdenum. Next is the fertilizer grade. Fertilizer grade refers to the guaranteed minimum percentage of nitrogen, phosphorus and potash that contain in the fertilizer material. So this is called as a fertilizer grade, in which amount the nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium are present in the fertilizer. The new number representing the grade are separated by hyphens and are always stated in the sequence of N, P, for example, label on the fertilizer bag, that is grade 28280 indicate 100 kilogram of fertilizer material contain 28 kilogram of nitrogen, 28 kilogram of phosphorus and no potash. So here you can see the different grade of the fertilizer available in India. Some of them are 28, 280, 20, 22, 14, 35, 14. That means it contains 14 kilogram of potash, 17, 17, 17. Okay, 14, 24 and 14. Fertilizer ratio. It refers to the ratio of the percentage of sodium P2O5, that is phosphorus, and K2O, potassium, in the fertilizer mixture. The fertilizer grade, that is 1266, has the fertilizer ratio 2:1:1. So again, this can be simplified as 2:1:1. So that is considered as fertilizer ratio. Fertilizer ratio. Suppliers of plant nutrients. So these are the straight fertilizer added to the plant nutrient mentioned in the grade. So this is the straight fertilizer. Conditioners. These are low grade organic material like peat soil, paddy, husk, groundnut hulls, etc., which are added to the fertilizer mixture during their preparation for reducing hygroscopicity to improve their physical condition. So these conditioners are basically these are the organic material, and this is added along with the fertilizer. So that can be present in the form of peat soil or paddy husk or groundnut hulls. Filler. It is a weight make material like sand, soil, coal, powder, etc. added to the fertilizer ingredient so as to produce mixture of desired grade. So sometimes for preparing the mixture, these substances, that is called as filler, and that can be in the form of sand, soil or clay powder, that can be added. Neutralizers of the residual acidity. These are the materials like dolomite, limestone, etc. added in fertilizer mixture to counteract the acidity of the nitrogenous fertilizers. So they are used as a neutralizers. So this is all about this session. Okay, so we completed the fertilizer part. We will have one more session to complete the manure. Thank you very much.